In this episode of Ricky Remembers, we continue our series of our walk down memory lane along the corridors of Ateneo Grade School as we count down the days and the weeks before our alumni homecoming this December 7 at the Ateneo High School covered courts. So for this episode of Ricky Remembers to Matutum in Ateneo Grade School in the year 1984 to 1985. But before we get to that particular year, I want to encourage everyone again to support our fundraising efforts for this year's alumni homecoming. We have a concert coming up this October 22 with Parokya ni Edgar at the Music Museum in Green Hills. If you want to reserve tickets or buy tickets for that concert, please contact any one of us, any one of our batchmates. You can message me, you can message Mr. Mark Bernal, who's also an admin of the Atenista group, for tickets and for reservations. They're running out fairly quickly. Last I checked, we had about 100 for the balcony and 100 for the orchestra. And also, we have a raffle where we are raffling away a Hyundai Kona for the first prize, a Vespa scooter for second prize, and a Specialized bike for third prize. And we're also giving away shoes from Colehan and some clothes from Nautica. So buy your raffle tickets now and get a chance to win any of those fabulous prizes. And lastly, we also have our batch watch. We're selling a really nice Seiko Urchin watch that's been customized with the Ateneo colors. We also only have a few of those left. So get a chance to get or hurry and get those few available watches. I'm gonna post in the comments the posters and all the materials for all the things that I just mentioned, all these efforts that we're doing to raise funds for our brothers and sisters for Tulong Dunong and also for our alumni homecoming this year. So back to the topic at hand. In this episode, Ricky remembers to Matutum in Ateneo Grade School in the year 1984 to 1985. So we've done Prep Matipid, we've done 1 EPIL, and now we're at Tu Matutum. In Tu Matutum in the year 1984 to 1985, our teacher was Miss Gonzalez. She was a relatively new teacher. In fact, I think it was only her second year teaching when she had us as her students in Tu Matutum. And yes, she is the sister of the other Miss Gonzalez who teaches grade 4, who, if I'm not mistaken, is still teaching right now, or she taught like many decades in the Ateneo Grade School. So this Miss Gonzalez is her younger sister. So our teacher was Miss if I remember correctly, was it Christina or Christine Gonzalez? But Miss Gonzalez was our class moderator for Tu Matutum. I want to remember grade 2 because it was the year that we had to go through Holy Communion. So there was a particular period during the year where we had to learn the entire mass, how it went, and then all the prayers. So we learned Our Father, we learned Hail Mary, we learned Hail Holy Queen, we learned the Apostles' Creed, and everything, and all the other prayers that went into the Mass or the Sacrament of Holy Communion, and also all the responses. Remember, we had to memorize all of these things for our Holy Communion in second grade. And I also remember in the process of learning all these things, everything was printed on mimeograph paper. Remember that even some of our quizzes and some of our LAS or our tests were printed on mimeograph paper and had a particular smell or a particular scent to it because of the toner. I'm sure you guys remember that. I don't know if it's still the case now in the grade school and in the high school, or do they have fancy bond paper or typewriting paper now, but back in our day, it was all mimeograph and it had a very particular smell or a distinct scent. Everything was printed on this gray mimeograph papers. I also remember I said that some students from Prep Malakas joined us in 1 EPIL, and then all of our classmates in 1 EPIL also became our classmates in Tu Matutum. I remember Ronnie Pizarro was one of those kids or one of those boys together with J.A. Ventura from Prep Malakas. They got combined into our section. Ronnie Pizarro eventually became a really good friend of mine in high school. We were classmates all of high school and also in college in UP. So high regards to Mr. Ronnie Pizarro. And also I remember we had a classmate. I can't quite recall if he was also our classmate in grade 1, but I know for sure he was our classmate in grade 2. Mr. Harold Pernicar. You know how you have those classmates who look like they're foreigners or they are foreigners and they're there for like 2 or 3 years. Yun pala, they were sons of expats. So I'm sure some of you watching this who are professionals right now, we do get expatriated to a different country and we work there, right, for a number of years, and our kids would have to go to school in that country or in that state. This was the situation for them. For the case of Mr. Harold Pernicar, I believe his father was German or French, and he was assigned to the Philippines for a few years. So he went to Ateneo for about a couple of years, and he was our classmate from grade 1 and grade 2. So I remember Harold Pernicar. And also, in the second grade, in grade 2 Matutum, we learned how to write paragraphs already. You remember the size 2 paper. I remember this lesson very well, where we were taught to write the first sentence, and then we needed to write 3 or 4 more sentences after that, and then you close the paragraph. So that was how we learned how to write a paragraph rather than just a sentence. So the other 3 sentences supported your first sentence or your first topic sentence, and then the last sentence just closed it. I remember I got really good at it as well. We had some exercises and I was fairly quick. All I needed to do was come up with different verbs or different adjectives to support the first sentence, and I was able to always submit my paper fast, and I was always the first. And I was wondering, how come my other classmates are struggling with this? It seems fairly easy. So at that time, as I mentioned in our last episode, I discovered I was fairly good at math. I also I discovered that I was fairly good at writing or at language or in English. So that was one of the lessons that I learned in grade 2 Matutum, how to write paragraphs. Now, the one incident that I remember very, very vividly from grade 2 Matutum, we had a classmate. His name is Temujin Madrid. Temujin, he's an eye doctor now, if I'm not mistaken. He's an eye surgeon. But he's an eye doctor. He's like a big deal now. And Temujin was a big kid. He was a tall kid for his age, and he was always some kind of target for some reason. In any case, I remember this. Temujin Madrid kept asking our moderator, Miss Gonzalez. Oh, no, sorry. It wasn't that he kept asking. He kept looking back at the clock. He kept looking back at the clock, the clock behind the classroom. He kept looking back at the clock, and our teacher, Miss Gonzalez, probably noticed it, or I don't know, got irritated or distracted by it, and asked him, Mr. Madrid, Temujin Madrid, why are you always looking at the clock? And Temujin Madrid simply answered, Ma'am, I'm waiting for recess to come already, or I'm eager for recess to come already. And you know what? As a punishment for doing that, you know what our teacher did? Our teacher made Temujin look at the clock without looking anywhere else for all of recess. That was his punishment. I thought that was a little cruel, but I remember it so well because I felt so bad. I felt so bad for my classmate Temujin. He was staring at the clock for all of 30 minutes while he was eating his sandwich. That was his punishment for always looking at the clock during class. So Temujin, I hate to put you on the spot, but I really remember that. And I don't know if you've blocked that out from your memory. I remember discussing this with you one time, and it seems you've forgotten it already, but I remember it. And during during grade 2 as well was when the EMC, or the Educational Media Center, opened. So we transferred the library from the grade 1 wing to that new structure, to that new building in the EMC already. So as you know, the EMC is right beside the swimming pool, and it had projection rooms at the bottom, and it had the library on the second floor. I remember this because we got in trouble in the EMC with my best friend, as I said, Joseph Ventura. We got in trouble for, I think we were maybe a little too rowdy in the in the library, or we did something. I don't particularly remember what exactly we did, but we did something where the librarian reported it to our moderator, Miss Gonzalez, and she scolded the both of us. And I remember this very well. She asked me, "Why did you do that? Why did you do this particular thing?" And I said, because Joseph Ventura did it as well, and I was just following him." And she said, I remember her distinctly saying, or specifically saying, "So if Joseph tells you to jump off a cliff, you'll jump off a cliff too. Just because he's your best friend, you're gonna do everything that he does or he tells you to do, or just imitate him." And I didn't know how to answer that. So I remember that very well. And Joseph, I don't know, J.A. Ventura, I don't know if you remember that, but that happened. I don't know if you got scolded as well or ako lang. Pero I remember that conversation with Miss Gonzalez very well. And I remember grade 2 also because we had our first field trip as a class in the Magnolia Ice Cream House. I'm sure all of you remember that Magnolia Ice Cream House along, is it Aurora Boulevard? So we had a field trip at the Magnolia Ice Cream House. I think we had another trip or another destination before that. I think we came from Fort Santiago or something. But what I remember about that was that the upholstery on the seat of the bus was, I got allergies from sitting on it, and my face was on the seat during the trip, and I got allergies on one side of my face because of that. And I remember this distinctly. I had to go to the doctor because of it. It was so bad. And I remember our classmate William James Uiloan, who lived near the Magnolia Ice Cream House. I believe he lived in Horseshoe Village or somewhere around there. And his mother was a doctor. So we went straight to her house so that she could treat me. And then she gave me medicine, and I was instructed to go home after that. Now here is where it gets tricky. That field trip was on a Friday, and the coming Monday, I was supposed to be the contestant for our elocution contest. I don't know if you remember this from the previous episode. I had mentioned that I was a contestant for our elocution in grade 1. So I also became the contestant for grade 2. And we have been practicing for this thing. And then I got sick on Friday, so I was sick the whole weekend. So I didn't go to school that Monday. So we didn't have a contestant for the elocution contest. And then also my backup, guess who my backup was? Mr. Ronnie Pizarro, who I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, also didn't go to school that day. He was supposed to be my alternate, or in the event that something happened to me, he was gonna be the one to be the contestant. So I think he also sensed, I don't know, Ronnie, you reply to this or react to this. I think he sensed that I wasn't gonna go on Monday and he wasn't ready, so he didn't go to school also. So anyway, the point being, we did not have a contestant. And when I came back to school on Tuesday that morning, I got the biggest scolding of my Ateneo life from Miss Gonzalez, because I think she was a little embarrassed or humiliated that we didn't have a contestant for the elocution contest. But what could I do? I got sick from the field trip, right? I got allergies all over my face, so I couldn't go to school that day. I think it was a valid excuse or a valid reason. So anyway, that's the elocution. Speaking of elocution contests, we also had a choral recitation in grade 2, and I remember our piece was called My Shadow, and at some point during the choral recitation, one of the students, or one of us, had to perform something in front of the group. You know, the choral recitation, it's the entire class, right? So in one part or in one stanza of the piece, our teacher thought of one student acting out whatever the group was saying, and guess who she chose? She chose me to do that, and one of our other classmates had to mimic what I was doing kasi nga my shadow. And then that shadow was Rio Calao, and I remember that very well. Rio, remember we had that conversation in Arizona when we met up after how long? I don't know, 35 years. where we talked about that, and you also remembered it. And you have forgotten, you had forgotten about it already, but when I reminded you, it all came back to you, where we jumped out of the group and you were my shadow and you had to follow whatever I was doing. So that was our elocution piece for that year. My Shadow with Rio Calao. Shout out to Rio. I hope you're doing okay. And then lastly, and I will end with this, grade 2 was the time when the Cub Scouts or the Boy Scouts were introduced to us. So we started out as Cub Scouts. We wore that green uniform. It was a green shirt and green shorts. We had a hat, and we also had that kerchief. And then you used that carabao or the kalabaw to hold that kerchief in place. Some carabaos were plastic, some were wood. Mas cool yung wood, mas cool yung kahoy, but I think the plastic one was more available, or it was even cheaper. So I remember that. And I also remember one of the activities for the Cub Scout group was camping in the Ateneo Grade School grounds. And that was the first time that I experienced an overnight or a class night in the Ateneo Grade School grounds. Can you imagine that? We were 8 years old, and our parents allowed us to sleep overnight in school or outside our houses and sleep in tents or in the classroom for one night. Can you imagine doing that now? If I had an 8-year-old son, I can't imagine having him sleep over anywhere for that matter, especially outdoors or in school. So they were different times, I guess. They were different times. So we were 8 years old and we already slept overnight in the Ateneo Grade School grounds for Cub Scout camping. And then I said I was gonna end with the Cub Scout, but I remember from grade 2, even from grade 1, remember those water fountains that we had in the corridors of grade school? They were not these fancy steel or aluminum water fountains. They were basically just a faucet. It was a faucet. It was a gripo. Tubo na may gripo. And then bubuksan mo, may tubig na may lalabas. And there was just this small ceramic sink to catch the water. Imagine that was just a gripo. It was just a simple faucet that was from the ground, and then it was a pipe, and there was a gripo. You turned it on and you drank water from there. But guess what? None of us caught anything. None of us got typhoid, or none of us got diarrhea or anything, or any poisoning or whatever. We were fine. I think we grew up fine. So yeah, I just remember those. I'm sure those are not around anymore because we're all a little bit more careful and sensitive with everything. So there you have it. That's our episode of Ricky Remembers for today. Ricky remembers to Matutum 1984 to 1985 at the Ateneo Grade School. Again, I'll encourage everyone to support our fundraising efforts. We have our concert with Parokya ni Edgar on October 22 at the Music Museum in Green Hills. And then we have our batch watch, the Seiko Urchin Watch. There's only a few left, so make sure you avail of those. I'll put all the photos and all the posters in the comments below so that you can see the particulars and the details. And also we have a raffle. We're raffling off a Hyundai Kona, a Vespa scooter, a Specialized bike, Cole Hand shoes, and Nautica wear on the day itself. We will see you on December 7 at the Ateneo High School covered courts. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be flying in from the States to be with all of you, and I hope to see everyone there. Until the next episode, thanks again for watching. Please like or comment below and subscribe to the channel. Click on the subscribe button below and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified with new episodes. I want to thank everyone who watched the episode yesterday. I got a total of close to 300 watch minutes, which is huge. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this or to listen to this in traffic if you're in your cars. So yeah, I advise you to watch this or listen to this while you're in traffic, while you're stuck in traffic for a couple of hours. Go to YouTube and or click on this and watch this or share this with your friends. So thanks again for watching. This has been Ricky Remembers. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!